Hi, Catherine. How are you, Catherine? Okay, Catherine, I can't hear you. I can't hear you right now.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
So
All
we'll
right.
get started for today.
Welcome,
So,
everybody, to our third broadcast of WLJA Common Law Under God. And did you want to do any kind of an opening prayer? Just a generic opening prayer
well,
for our
we could say
broadcast?
we could say the Lord's Prayer. That's what God tells us to pray. Let's
That's
do that.
right.
Okay.
Okay. All right.
Our Father who art in
Lord
heaven,
in heaven,
hallowed
hallowed
be
be
thy
thy
name.
name.
Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Okay. As you all know, we do a common law broadcast, and common law is based on God's rule that you can find this in Matthew, but it's all over the Old Testament as well as the New. That we do unto others as we would have them do unto us. So that's where our authority comes from. That and Genesis 1:26 that God instructed us to take dominion over his creation. And we have not. We have fallen down on the job severely over the centuries, and we have delegated the duty of being stewards of this planet by handing it over to people who do not deserve it. And the chickens are certainly coming home to roost now. But it's not too late, and we can accept the gift, and we can administer, what we're supposed to administer.
Correct.
So um,
Um,
we're going to talk about human trafficking, or according to God's law, that would be kidnapping. And common law recognizes kidnapping. Their statutes pervert the definition. Um, they're similar, but their statutes about kidnapping are different. And we're all seeing what happens when they commit acts of kidnapping. They have obscure definitions of like human trafficking, and it doesn't necessarily involve the sex trade. But anytime there's, even in their world, according to their United Nations law, there's human trafficking is defined in part to be uh, anything that any act of uh, through force, fraud, or deception of exploiting people for profit. And it usually involves the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of people through force, fraud, or deception. Um, it's basically, the simple version, the common law version, is to take people against their will. And it's been interesting to see how they pervert this in practice. While they practice kidnapping, and then when we try and rescue our loved ones, they try and accuse us of kidnapping when in fact they're the original kidnappers or the rescuers. So we aim to use common law to correct that situation so that people can rescue their loved ones from human trafficking.
we have, Catherine, we have quite a few people in the studio,
Yes.
and we're going to get a few of you on, definitely. And we're getting notices that there's other people trying to get into the studio. And at the present time, we can only let 10 people at a time into the studio to be a guest or ask a question or comment or, you know, hear. But they, also, anyone else can also watch live on our YouTube channel, which is also WLJA Common Law Under God, under the live stream section. And then, as you know, if anybody finishes as a guest and they're off, and then we could get more people on. But it's nice to know that we have more people today supporting us and want to discuss what's going on here. Do you want to?
Yeah. Now, people who cannot get on live, they can still post a question or something on the live stream, or no?
Yes, on the YouTube.
On the right part of the screen.
No, they would be doing that on the YouTube page. They could post comments.
Okay. They can't do that until it's all right. I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Does anybody want to ask questions at this point?
Did you want to bring Barbara on first?
Yeah, I saw her earlier, and where'd she go?
I'll let. Hi, Barbara. How are you?
Hi.
Catherine, I'll let you introduce Barbara. Okay.
Barbara is a former attorney, also from Florida now, but I think you were an attorney in other states. Is that right?
New York and Florida.
New York and Florida. Okay. And has been an Americans with Disabilities Act advocate and a strong advocate for for the elderly who are abducted and then trafficked through predatory probate proceedings. You want to tell us how the basic scam works, Barbara?
Yeah, let me just say that people don't understand the magnitude of the crime. And so I've headed up a group of about 300 victims of the child trafficking courts and the guardian genocide courts is what I call them. And even the victims themselves, it's a quagmire, because when they first get into the racket, they don't understand the diabolical nature of it or that it's intentional and systemic. So they go from one corporate agency to another seeking relief from the crimes of the fellow corporate agencies. And they don't recognize until they're really very far along the process that there is no remedy by the government, which is a corporate government. And we can talk about that later because there's so many facets of this crime. So what we've done is try different routes as a group to get remedy, because the only thing that happens when you go into these so-called courts alone is more crimes and ongoing criminal enterprise and retaliation. So when I originally started the group, the intention was that we were going to go to the corporate agency, which we now know is a corporate protection racket or protection arm, called the International Criminal Court, because they use all of the right words, they define the crimes appropriately. So it's beyond kidnapping, it's beyond human trafficking, it's called atrocity crimes, it's crimes against humanity. So there's four of the most severe crimes that the International Criminal Court purports to address, which are genocide, which is what happens in the guardian racket, but they call their crime of genocide, they call it guardianship. Crimes against humanity, which includes trafficking, human trafficking, and you read the definition perfectly, Catherine, from the UN Office of Crimes and Drugs, which defines human trafficking as fraud and the forcible taking of someone by fraud. So it doesn't have to be sex trafficking. That's what child trafficking is. That's what the family court, they call it the family court, is all about. And then there's crimes of aggression and there's war crimes. And so what's happening is falling within all of those parameters, even though the International Criminal Court and the United Nations pretend like war crimes are like active military crimes against nations, That's not true at all. These are crimes by the government against their population. They're far worse. They're also a crime of perfidy under the Geneva Convention because it's a false flag that the United States represents, that it's a protector when it's a perpetrator. So I don't want to get too deep into all of the terms, but for the fact that people have to recognize that these are the worst possible crimes. Parental alienation, which people whine about and complain about and rant about on Facebook all the time, it's kind of their term that they like you to use, parental alienation, as if they have the right to drag you into their courts. And then, if they alienate you as parents, they use the term parental alienation. No, 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 and no. These are crimes against humanity. So you've got to start using the terms correctly. And so the victims themselves are part of the problem because they don't recognize it and they don't understand that there's no remedy through these government agencies because it's deliberate and systemic. So to finish the story about what happened in the international court, I painstakingly put together affidavits of, at that time we had about 300 people, not 300, I'm sorry, we had about 200 people in the group. So we put together their affidavits, we followed the terminology that they used, and we hand delivered it. By that, I mean, we sent it directly to each of the 18 judges in the International Criminal Court in The Hague with instructions that they were not to give the documents to the prosecutor because the prosecutor was the protector. And so now we're giving them formal official notice of all of the 4 atrocity crimes by the government against its population and the world population. And we had documented proof that many of the people in our group, actually there was between 20 and 25% of the people in our group were what they call dual citizens. So some of them, were qualified to file the document with the International Criminal Court because it takes the asinine position that they can't adjudicate crimes against humanity by a country that hasn't agreed to be responsible for crimes against humanity when the United States is the host agent. So, once you start cutting through all of their trickery and deception, you really start to understand what's going on. So the instructions were, this does not go to the state prosecutor. You 18 judges now you have in your hand, because we've personally delivered a package of 300 papers to you documenting with evidence, with affidavit, all of the 4 atrocity crimes. Now, these are your instructions. We're giving you instructions. You need to give us remedy. You need to hold them criminally accountable. You need to give us restitution. You need to rescue our family members. You need to give us protection. And that was basically the four things that we had instructed them to do. So the document sat at the International Criminal Court for probably 6 or 7 months. And I'm not really sure what precipitated a response. I know there was a triggering mechanism, but I don't recall exactly what it was. But we got a 1-page letter after the 5 or 6 or 7 months that they sat on it from the prosecutor, the very person that we said does not have jurisdiction, does not have authority, should not be given to him, with his template letter saying, we regret to let you know, or as you may be aware, we don't have jurisdiction because the United States is not a signatory to the International Criminal Court. So, in the course of the filing, we had said to them, we know the U.S. is not a party. And so if you're going to take that position, you might as well invalidate all of the orders that you entered against the Nazis because they didn't agree to be responsible for their crimes. So long story short, by getting that letter, and we did turn around and we filed criminal complaints against the prosecutor and the parties on the prosecution team, and that's been sitting there for maybe a year. So long story short, we now know that it is evident, glaringly evident and obvious that the International Criminal Court is just one of the corporate agencies that acts as the protection racket. So now we're circling back to people's grand juries because, of course, we have the unalienable rights to protect, defend, and secure our unalienable rights. And that's why I'm so happy that Catherine is setting up these people's grand juries and making the public aware that this is the remedy. And if we do not take remedy ourselves, shame on us. We're part of the problem. We're being complicit with the problem. And it's been going on for far too long. And the people in the group, my group of 300, many of them still do not understand. So we are here and we're telling the public the same thing over and over and over and over, wasting all kinds of time when we should be moving forward with the steps that we need to take to hold these government perpetrators criminally and civilly accountable. So one other not little thing, but one other thing that I do want to throw out is that I have declared my candidacy as People's President 2024 because I resent the fact that these corporate government officials have trespassed our taxpayer offices. They're sitting in the Supreme Court, committing crimes against humanity and atrocity crimes against us. They've taken over the Oval Office. They've taken over the legislative buildings, state and federal. And we need to lawfully take our rights back, take our buildings back, take our families back, and get restitution and hold them criminally accountable. So I'll stop right there because, well, actually, I want to say one more thing, which is the crux of what we're doing. These are our unalienable rights. These are our unalienable rights that are being deprived. So all of the crimes, I don't care whether you're in the human trafficking, child trafficking court, whether you're in the guardian genocide court, whether you're in their private prisons for profit because they made up some false accusation against them, whether you're Julian Assange languishing in some vile prison in the UK because he exposed the government crimes, whether you're Edward Snowden and you fled to Russia, it's all connected. It's all deprivation of our unalienable rights. And that's all anyone really has to understand. Our rights cannot be deprived by the government. They're there to protect our rights. So I'll stop here and, Catherine, you can continue with any questions if you want to ask.
Yeah, I want to emphasize for people, I'm not, and neither one of us by ourselves can form a common law or other grand jury. That's going to be up to the people banding together and giving some kind of notice to the public of their intention to form such a court, and then doing it, or not a court, but I stated that in order to take back or to assume our responsibilities, that to manage the planet, we've got to have some kind of system of justice. And what we have now, we don't have a system of justice, and that goes for the so-called international community and its so-called courts. None of these are courts. These are just parts of a massive global criminal operation that use the term and the concept of a corporation to hide behind. And I think one of the things we need to do is to understand that as free people under God, we don't recognize corporations. What is a corporation? It's a legal fiction that can do nothing because it doesn't have a brain, it doesn't have hands, it doesn't have eyes, it can't do anything. It's a made up concept that can be placed on a piece of paper, but it's not real. But they've somehow brainwashed us to believe that it is real and that somehow it has powers over us, but it doesn't. Except, if we just agree, if we get terrorized into agreeing, but the people who run these corporations, they do have some, they certainly have a lot of guns at their disposal. Let's put it that way. And, but we have to take back our system of justice. We have to have common law courts, which they admit we are entitled to do. It's Chisholm versus Georgia, 1793, one of their so-called U.S. Supreme Court decisions in which they admit that nobody had, that only the people, are the source of all law. These corporations or the people working for these corporations aren't even really our public servants. They are agents of corporations that got some kind of outsourced contract to act as if they were parts of the government. Congress is a series of about 6 or 7 private for-profit corporations, for example. So are all the state legislatures. So what do they enact? They're enacting corporate bylaws. They're not enacting law. Why do we call them lawmakers? They don't enact any laws. The law is already there, and it's been handed down to us by God. And
Exactly.
and
Catherine, for those of you who are unaware of who you are, you were a practicing attorney for the state of Ohio for a total of 40 years. 40 years you were in that system, and I think you know it pretty well before you publicly resigned in 2019 and exposed these courts and what's going on for what it truly is. And 40 years is a long time, I think, right, to go through this and finally realize what finally brought you to the point where the light bulb went off and you're like, I've been doing this for 40 years. I cannot do it anymore.
Well, I was aware that these were not really courts, and that people who pose as, who are members of the corporate bar association, or are taking their marching orders anyway, their so-called ethics rules from these private for-profit corporations, including the international bar community, are actually in violation of the original 13th article to the 1781 Constitution, the Articles of Confederation, which is still in effect, was ratified by the requisite number of states. It's probably got a lot more legitimacy than subsequent versions of the Constitution do. And in that document, there's a prohibition, as there are in other parts of the Constitution, against people who have who've accepted titles of nobility, which the term esquire that many attorneys use is certainly an honorary title that is, I think, just in the Middle Ages, it was considered just below the title of knight, and that disqualifies like 90-some% of our so-called legislators, congressmen, all of our judges, all the members of the bar who are representing living people who are perfectly able to present themselves.
And also we have unlawfully monopolized.
Exactly.
They have monopolized unlawfully the courts here as well.
I don't know if there's anything, biblically about monopolies, but there certainly is in the private codes and statutes of the corporate United States in terms of the Clayton and Sherman antitrust acts, and the monopolization of the so-called, legal community, the bar associations, was brought out in a matter of Goldfarb versus Virginia State Board of Bar Examiners or something like that. Anyway, if you remember Goldfarb in Virginia, you can pull up the case. So as bad as a corporation is, and as bad as it is for its agents to use it to shield themselves, or they think they're shielding themselves from liability, it's worse when they become monopolies. Because then it's like, not only, Because in a corporation you can harm other people and you don't have to pay for it. That's the purpose of a corporation, limited liability. So is that the proper thing for a proper form of business organization for an entity that says is promoting justice? I don't think so. I don't think it's lawful for anyone, any man or woman, to go into business. I don't see how it could be. Go into business under a corporate name and a corporate fiction that doesn't really exist, and then the corporation manufactures products that harm people. But hey, I'm not responsible. I'm just the CEO.
Right.
No. The corporation has to pay for that harm, unless they
Can I
have
just
some.
jump in? I just want to jump in and make a comment along the lines that you just discussed, because, once you get the fraud and once you get the fiction that they're perpetrating, it becomes so easy. The news becomes so easy to see right through. So I get Google alerts all day and all night. So I got a Google
Please don't
alert.
use Google. Google is evil.
Well, it's nice to see the lies and the misrepresentations and to understand. I know Google's kind of a funny thing because, I use Google, I use Bing, I use different ones to compare what you get when you're looking up information. And so you put in the words to Google and it gives you the reverse of what you're looking for. It's so apparent. But in any event, so I get a notice that in Florida, which is rolling out all of these laws we've got to find a better word, Catherine. We've talked about
corporate policies. That's all they are.
Acts, something actions, corporate policy,
corporate
right?
statutes.
Corporate policy.
Barbara, real quick again. And are you still a practicing attorney?
Okay, so my situation is that I practiced law for 25 years. I had a certificate in Florida and in New York. I never set foot in court. I was just a real estate attorney. So I didn't know that there was a crime syndicate going on until my mother was captured in the Guardian genocide racket. I lived up in New York at the time. I'm from Florida. I lived in New York. I was practicing with a very prominent firm in New York. And so I myself had sought to put my mother into the guardianship. This was 13 years ago because my sibling was doing all of the things that you hear about, harming her, physically abusing her, stealing her money. So I made the rounds like everybody else does to the FBI, to the police, to the state attorney, to everybody and anybody, and was given the usual answer: this is a civil matter. Well, we're not fools. Listen, Mr. Police Officer, Mr. State Attorney, Mr. FBI agent. Here's proof of theft, physical abuse, all of the list of crimes that they perpetrate. And I have all of this in writing. I have forged documents. I have bank accounts. I said, I'm not a fool. This is not a civil matter. You are not doing your job. And so, then I would go down that route and try to file criminal claims against them. But we know how that ends up when you go there.
Actually, it's not their job. They say it's their job. They want us to believe it's their job, but it's not their job.
Well, let's get into that just a minute, because I think that's really important. So one of the things that I've stressed to my group is that, and I don't want to lose what I was going to say about another procedural, criminal procedural rule that they came up with, that in Florida they stated that whoever is putting these rockets up through NASA, the space program, and I think they might have particularly identified maybe Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, that if they blow up and if, there's a calamity and if, 1 or 100 people are killed or harmed, no liability. They've passed this corporate policy that these people don't have any liability. And so I just look at it and say, who are they kidding? And then the news reports it as if it's a real legitimate event. But to get back to, the lawful acts of the sheriff on a state level versus the FBI, who is their purported law enforcement on a federal level. I'd like to hear your views on the sheriff, because the sheriff under the state constitutions are, the legitimate law enforcement. At least they have their designated powers, but that all changes now because we know they're all corporations. But under the federal law enforcement policies, there is no federal law enforcement that was established under the federal constitution. So it's all a farce, even going in, even from somebody that doesn't understand that we're all under the thumb of these corporations until we take back our rights.
Not only if we think we are.
No. I mean, that's what the victims up until now still believe. But of course we're not. It's just all a big farce. But the point is that under federal constitution, there is no federally designated law enforcement with names like FBI, DOJ, and so, Secret Service and all of that. And so they are actually designated by their fellow corporate, employees to handle that pretend job. So it's all the biggest of big farces, and it's only
it's
used.
Worse than that. It's worse than that. Article 1, Section 8 not only does not authorize FBI, DOJ, CIA, FDA, any of those entities.
Let's call it what it is. It's a huge organized criminal empire.
Yes.
They have organized a huge
transnational, because it's not just,
let me finish about Article 1, Section 8, that when the Constitution fails to authorize something at the so-called federal level, then it actually prohibits it, because anything not authorized according to the 9th and 10th Amendments is prohibited to the feds and is reserved to the states by the 9th or to the people by the 10th Amendment. And there are no states. I mean, there's the original state republics, but their offices are empty. The corporate, all the state of Ohio, state of Florida, state of New York, any of these states, these are not states, these are corporations. Now, the original Ohio Republic of the people, that's still around, but, we kind of abandoned it.
Yeah,
but getting into what their jobs are, these corporate entities, even if there weren't the corporate impediment to them acting at all, according to their own system, for example, in Warren versus District of Columbia, 4444 Atlantic 2nd 1, 1981 decision, 3 women were being held hostage by 2 men and had twice managed to telephone so-called police to request their help. The police never came. The 3 women were beaten, robbed, and raped during the ensuing 14 hours. The D.C. court found no liability by the police, stating that the alleged, and this is a quote from that decision, fundamental principle of American law is that, they meant corporate policy, is that a government and its agents are under no general duty to provide public services such as police protection to any individual citizen. Now, in case you think that's a fluke, agents of the United States Supreme Court have similarly admitted that agents of so-called child protective service corporations also have no duty to try and prevent even the foreseeable murders of children. That's DeShaney versus Winnebago County Department of Social Services.
And what state was that decision?
That was from the United States Supreme Court. It came out of Wisconsin originally, but it went up to the U.S. Supreme Court.
And what was the name of the case again?
DeShaney, capital D, little e, capital SHANEY versus Winnebago County Department of Social Services. It's 489 U.S. 189. So, even in their sick system, their corporate system, they're under no obligation to do anything to help you. The whole concept of police power, the whole concept of parents patriae, this so-called judge-made law, and that isn't law at all. It's just another device. It's another scam. They don't have that authority, and but we assume that they do. We can't go to them and the same deal with your international criminal court of whatever. That's another. I don't know, where was it incorporated, in Delaware or something? It's just another private for profit corporation. That's going into the justice business. The fake justice business, in which no justice is administered. Because the purpose of a corporation is always one thing, to make profits for the corporation. That's what it's for. Now, if from time to time they might accidentally or deliberately make a decision, if someone's foolish enough to allow them to be the reciters, then that helps someone, that doesn't mean that decision is generally only going to happen if somebody benefits financially from it, or politically, which can indirectly lead to financial benefit. That's all it's about. It's a big international criminal conglomerate that does business just as a corporation. I mean, that's all it is. Now, and everybody's kind of worried about, well, what about all the liabilities of the Faucis and the, and the big pharma people? They've been given, immunity for their crimes. Well, the corporations may have, because one corporation can give any other corporation whatever it wants, and they invest in each other too. So it's all blurred, there's no separation. It's not like government and then private enterprise. No, it's all private. It's, but the people who run big pharma and they kill people, they are liable. You betcha they're liable, and there is no power on earth that can make them not liable. No matter how many statutes they enact, they cannot get them off the hook. And whatever is happening to us, the chemtrails in the sky, some man or woman is doing that or ordering that done. And we can bring that man or woman into a true grand jury of the people and stop it. We can issue true bills. Now, we have to have an infrastructure for such an operation to happen. We need the people. We got people, don't we? We got people who want this to stop if they could understand that this isn't just another scam. This common law has been around in one form or another and practiced by human beings for at least 900 years. Going back to Magna Carta in 1215, which was really kind of created the first grand jury, although I think there were preliminary versions of it before that. Going back to the time of Moses, they had common law courts to administer justice, and they were administering the justice of God, which is what all true law is based on.
Exactly. Catherine, regarding the law, and we spoke yesterday about Frederick Bastiat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do you mind if I just show the public and read just like the first paragraph of what he said? Is that okay?
Hey, who was he? He was a Belgian, wasn't he? Belgian philosopher.
I believe he was French, right?
Okay.
Yeah. The thing is, this was back in 1850, and it was saved and recorded because this is one of the teachings that is known to go on century after century after century because it's so profound, real, and true, and thought out. And so if you don't mind,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to read like the first paragraph of what he wrote here. Hold on just one second. Let me pull it up. Okay, so can you see that? Can
Yeah.
you see it? Okay, the
I'm
law.
not sure about reading it, but yeah.
Okay, I'll read it. The first part of it. It says the law. Now this was back in 1850. Okay, the
Mm-hmm.
law perverted and the police powers of this, listen carefully. In 1850 this was written. The law perverted and the police powers of the state perverted along with it. The law, I say, not only turned from its proper purpose, but made to follow an entirely contrary purpose. The law became the weapon of every kind of greed. Instead
Mm-hmm.
of checking crime, the law itself, guilty of the evils it is supposed to punish. If this is true, it is a serious fact and moral duty to requires me and now us to call the attention of my fellow citizens to it. Life is a gift from God. We hold from God the gift which includes all others. The gift is life, physical, intellectual, and moral life. But life cannot maintain itself alone. The creator of life has entrusted who? Us with the responsibility of preserving, developing, and perfecting it. In order that we may accomplish this, he has provided us with a collection of marvelous faculties, and he's put us in the midst of a variety of natural resources. By the application of our faculties to these natural resources, we convert them into products and use them. This process is necessary in order that life may run its appointed course. Life, faculties, production, in other words, individuality, liberty, property, this is man. And in spite of the cunning of artful political leaders, these three gifts from God precede all human legislation and are superior to it. Life, liberty, and property do not exist because men have made laws. On the contrary, it was the fact that life, liberty, and property existed beforehand that caused men to make laws in the first place.
Of course, yeah, I don't like that he attributes any ability of, you know, well, okay, people can make law, people can interpret law, people, earthly law. That's true, but what he's also talking about, the perversion of law, weaponizing law, and then it's really no longer law. Of course, it's just a crime.
It is a huge crime.
Uh-huh.
What back then he called weaponization of law. It is a
In case
huge, and
people think we're
it's happening today in such a great manner. It seems uncontrollable, but we can do this. We have to do it.
I wanted to, in case anybody thinks that we're just, theorizing something that, and that, that the enemy is not really the enemy and that there really is not a plan to harm us, I would refer you to a writing from Edward Mandell House, who was a Karl Rove type kingmaker of his day, good buddy to Woodrow Wilson, and founder of the Council on Foreign Relations. And he was he was probably part of the Jekyll Island gang of banksters that were determined to further corporatize America. And this was before birth certificates were in common use, before a lot of things. And what he told Wilson, this was a letter to Wilson, a private letter. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people and that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living. They will be our chattel, and we will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant and under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Americans by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering, so they knew they were deceiving people, by delivering the bills of lading to us, that's what he was calling the birth certificates, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent, forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure our plan. And if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability.
Wow. And what year was this, Catherine?
This was probably around 1910. Yeah. And he also helped pick the charter members of the original Federal Reserve Board. He's a very powerful guy. And Woodrow Wilson basically didn't even go to the bathroom without Mandel House's permission.
These corporate guys were really busy.
Very busy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right.
And so that's what
what they're going to do, and then they do it.
Yes, they do, and it's right in your face. And so that's what I just don't understand, why we keep saying the same thing, the truth. We speak this truth to a candid world, as was stated in the Declaration of Independence, that cited probably 20 or more intolerable acts of the king, which we're experiencing right now, but 100 times over. And so what is it that the public and the victims of whatever government crime they're experiencing, my focus is on the child trafficking and guardian genocide, but it's all connected. And so it befuddles me, and it gets me very upset, in an understatement, as to why we have apathy by the public when we're going to get further and further beyond the 8 ball. And so, Catherine, you say the same thing. Luciana, you say the same thing. I say the same thing every day. It's the same thing. We need to get to remedy. We need to fast forward. We need to start putting in
anybody with common sense and
yes,
any morals should be baffled and wondering why aren't you concerned about this? Why aren't you concerned about this? One of the answers I get many times is, oh, it's been like this for so many years. It's like that saying, you can't fight City Hall. No, this saying was put out there. They want you to think you can't fight City Hall.
That's right.
Now everybody sits back and says, oh, well, you heard, right? You can't fight them. Well, who told you that? So you repeated it, and then they repeated it, and now you all believe it? What are you guys, a bunch of monkeys over here? I mean, come on. I mean,
the other thing is, let me just say one thing real quick, Catherine, is having intimately been familiar with 300 stories that are all the same thread, they're all the same crimes.
Mhm.
I am outraged that this could possibly happen. This crime against anyone is a crime against everyone. And it's not isolated like they want the victims to believe. And so now the victims know they're in communication constantly. They're constantly chatting on Facebook or LinkedIn or whatever. They get it. They know it, but they still haven't woken up. They're still paralyzed. It's infuriating. And so
They're
we,
afraid. They're
maybe,
afraid.
well, I don't know whether it's fear or whether it's apathy or whether it's laziness or whether, it's a combination of things, so but we have got to move this forward. And just an answer to, or just a comment, Luciana, for what you said about it's been this way forever.
That's what
There
this
was a
is.
philosopher, and I keep saying I have to go back and find the exact language, but it basically was along the lines that, the easy process, you can remedy quickly. The difficult takes a little bit longer, and the impossible takes a little bit longer. Do you understand? So even if people consider this impossible, it just might take a little bit longer to get to the remedy and to get to the end. But it's going to take longer the longer the people do whatever it is that they're doing. And I always use the term trade recipes on Facebook. When their kids are being raped and trafficked and kidnapped and extorted, and their assets are being plundered and they're threatened with jail, how is this possible that they're paralyzed? I just don't get it. I find it infuriating. So I just keep saying, tick tock, time's running, wake up. And so maybe this is a good time. And Catherine, you do it along the process that you want. But I would love to just jump in, and people have to accept the fact that Catherine is a resigned attorney from the bar after 40 years. I practiced for 25 years in real estate until my mother was captured in the racket. And now I have a group of 300 people. We're credentialed, we're vetted, we're qualified, we're experts. Luciana is a victim herself. My law license was stripped from me after I had retired from the practice of law because it became a full-time job for me to fight the criminals in my mother's case. So I sent overnight letters to all of the corporate judicial officials sitting on the Florida Supreme Court demanding the arrest of 25 judges. And that was just the beginning of the cartel in my case, in my mother's case. And all hell rained loose on me. I mean, so that opened up the doors to all kinds of retaliation. They took my law license. After I was a retired attorney, they had no jurisdiction.
You never needed it. You never needed it.
No, of course not. No. But I'm just pointing out the fact that here we are. We're doing everything possible for the victims, for the public. We can't get your rights back without your participation. And this is what we do all day long. We're not looking for money like the government officers of the court who take your money and then work behind your back to steal your rights.
And I want to take note of that. And I want everyone listening to know that. And it almost brings me to tears because I want to repeat what you said. Catherine Hine is not a 40-year veteran of the Bar Association, resigned because of what she found out that we're trying to explain to you. She's helping so many. She's like, please call me, contact me. I want to help you. Catherine Hine has never asked for a dime from anyone. She spends tireless hours. I think this morning I woke up to an email from her that she was just going to bed. I think it was 6:50 in the morning, 7 o'clock, writing, notices, trying to help someone who is suffering at the hands of these criminals who call themselves authorities over us. Okay. Barbara Stone, I don't see you asking money. I see you here saying, please, learn from what I have learned. Go here, go there. Let me teach you something. You're not sitting here saying, all right, here's my website, but you got to charge, but I charge $50 or I charge this for you to join so that I can give you this information. These are two attorneys that have been in the thick of what we are talking about, this criminal empire of these bogus courts in the bar, and they are now out of it. They have also had family members who are victims, just like I am a victim as well. Many of us are, and so many afraid to speak. They're not asking for money. They are asking you to listen, let them help you, please. And let's join together and help other people, because like I love your saying, Barbara, tick tock, tick tock.
TikTok.
Right.
It's not getting any better. It's just getting worse.
No,
Real
it's not
fast.
going to get better.
It's getting
Catherine, do you
worse
want to
fast.
go through the process a little bit about Roger, or did you want to kind of hit on or go
Sure,
through the
I can hit the
steps?
high spots, because what Roger Hilligus is a man who's been abducted, been kidnapped, and
Let me just brief the intro. Roger's part of my 300 victim group, and
Can you
so
give
I
his
reached
full-
out
his
to
full
Catherine.
name? His full
Roger
name again.
Hilligus. Roger Hilligus, and Roger's mother is Susan Hilligus. And so Susan Hilligus was kidnapped and captured in the Guardian genocide racket. And then she was murdered after Roger went to remove her from the facility with another law enforcement agent. Removed her from the facility, rescued his mother, took his mother away from criminals. And so then they charged Roger with their crimes. And so Roger has been, he's been in jail in Missouri. Well, I'll let you talk about the particulars. But so I reached out to Catherine, and without 1 second of hesitation, I asked her to help start the process rolling by dealing with Roger's case, because he's now falsely incarcerated for the crimes against the government perpetrators, including Barry Lewis Breslow, the judicial perpetrator, Amos Steege, who is the prosecuting perpetrator, Christopher Hicks, who is the boss man of Amos Steege, who is doing everything possible to silence Roger, to abuse him, to torture him, to terrorize him, to make sure that they cover up his crimes. So without hesitation, when I reached out to Catherine to please help, let's get this grand jury process started with Roger, boom, we were up and running. And so now Catherine has been working 24/7 to get notices to the perpetrators of their crimes. And so this is where we're going to, start the process with Roger. So go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. Well, one of the things that we do, and I think if people understand that they can dispel their fear by gaining more knowledge. Knowledge has a way of dispelling fear. It gives you confidence, so you know that whoever, fear no man, fear God, but fear no man, because they don't have the authority that we've been handing over to them. And here's a couple of specific reasons that they've already admitted to. I love to use the enemy's own words against them, and they can't seem to stop talking. They never stop talking. They never seem to stop admitting their crimes. And one of the big things is, of course, their records. The records you can look up yourself on Dun and Bradstreet for any entity you think is really a court. You'll find out what they really are. So as a court, they've admitted, as a corporation, they've admitted that they don't have any authority to do anything in their own case law. But the problem is you can approach them with, okay, you don't have any subject matter jurisdiction, you have no authority, but you can. There was a time that would work, but we've gotten too far down this path. And that's not working anymore. They just do whatever they want in their private for-profit corporate structures.
Because
And
they know there's no consequences. They're covered up, protected, concealed at every tier. There's no consequences.
and they have done a lot to discredit the common law movement as well. They've done an enormous amount. They've, like what they did, to discredit people who were skeptical of the one shooter, Lee Harvey Oswald theory of the assassination of John Kennedy. So they have many weaknesses. Once you understand your enemy has enormous numbers of weaknesses that he will admit to, because he can't do otherwise, then you can box him into a corner he can't get out of. And that's what these notices are for. The notices are more than just saying, you did terrible things, you should be, you should pay fines, you should, be locked up, you should. No, we do more than that. We tell them you don't have any authority, but we don't ever file our notices in their tribunals.
You mean in the devil's sandbox?
In the devil's sandbox.
A good friend of mine said, someone asked her, well, why aren't you going into court? Why don't you file? She said, oh no. She said, I am not crossing that crime scene. Oh no. That was a great way of putting it, because I imagine these courthouses where they're committing these crimes. And I'm telling you, that's the way you need to envision it. A building with that crime scene
Yes,
tape
that's right.
around
That's
it.
right.
Do you want to cross that crime scene? I can only imagine what's going to happen then, we know.
Yeah. Now, and we, at one point when we're strong enough, I believe that we, the people, need to send notices of ejectment to the men and women who are operating the public courthouses in the name of corporate greed.
And here's the thing. When we do send the notices, who will eject them? With their big guns and power of their, the police.
Well, they have to resist
us.
They, the most
I think
psychopathic.
we need to wake up the police. I mean, their own police mafia. I mean, I know there are some good police officers out there, even though it's a corporation. There's a few, Catherine. There's a few.
No, Luciana. The reality is that if they were,
but they do what they're told.
Then you've just negated your statement, because they can't be good police officers and follow Nazi orders. And so I always say,
and violate their oath of office.
Right. All of these people need to go to work for McDonald's, another corporation, but at least earn an honest paycheck. Don't follow Nazi orders. So none of them are good, because they're all going with the program to deprive us of our rights. They're not doing their job.
Before they took their oath of office, they should have thought to themselves, this is the oath that I'm taking. What will I do if my superior tells me you must do something that's going to violate someone's constitutional rights? Will I obey
someone's unalienable rights? Unalienable rights.
Will I go ahead and violate their rights, or am I going to stay true to my oath of office? I'm going to tell you, 100% of them are going to do what they're told by their boss.
Right.
I saw one or two during COVID that refused to obey a boss's order and arrest someone who wouldn't wear a mask, and went on Facebook and told the public, I was just let go from my job because I refused to listen to my boss and arrest somebody who they wanted me to throw someone out of a building or something for not wearing a mask. But as I explained, I can't do that because that's not a law. It's a it's a temporary mandate or whatever. It's not, they have rights.
Policy.
Yeah. And they fired me for doing so. But by coming forward in the public and social media and exposing, I was an officer, I didn't do what I was told, I did the right thing, they had so much support by the public and people who were like, actually did the right thing. We
Right, but
love this
support,
guy.
but
Let's
support, but
support him.
support is one thing. Support is one thing. But getting to remedy, the true remedy, the true end goal is a whole nother thing. And that's where we have to go. We don't want to be like the fans, supporting,
Yeah.
then we're no different than, our trading recipe victims
Yeah,
on Facebook.
exactly.
This is so serious. This is so
Exactly.
serious. This is so important. This is so critical. And so we have to roll this out, and we have to do it quickly, and we have to do a We the People united front and get this done. And so I sent this out. I sent this notice out to the 300 people in my group. I'm not sure how many people are here, but they're all going, those who aren't here are going to hear from me about where they are, because we have got to get the public united and behind this. There is nothing more important. And so we are spending our time, our energy, our efforts all day, every day to get this done. We're not doing this for ourselves.
Exactly.
We're doing it for the public. We're doing it for the victims. We're doing it for humanity. And it's got to be done, and it's got to be done quickly.
We've had someone sitting here waiting to get on, and they have someone in their family who's suffering abuse, and they want to ask I think a question. And I'm going to go ahead and bring Kathleen on. I believe, if that's okay. I believe Kathleen's from Colorado. Hi, Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. How are you?
I'm fine. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you
for
being.
Yeah, my mother was she was murdered a year ago.
Jesus.
Kathleen is in my group. Yes, and you tried to call me, Kathleen. It seems like you weren't able to get in, so I'm glad you're able.
Sorry, Kathleen.
Yeah. I buried my mother last Tuesday at Fort Logan National Cemetery. She was a veteran of the United States Air Force and one of the first females of her generation to serve as a first lieutenant and also a registered nurse. And I went through all my money trying to save my mother's life. I went through.
We all do.
And I'm completely destitute.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother tried to escape, and she fought so hard for her life. And they abused and neglected my mother, and then they murdered her at Parker Adventist Hospital. And I am facing criminal charges right now. I have a class 3 felony.
For what?
Elder abuse and neglect. For their crimes. This is the program. But everybody's got to recognize the program. It's the same thing over and over and over again. And so while we're doing all of what we're trying to do to put these perpetrators in federal prison for life or the death sentence, as is required under 18 U.S.C. 241 and 240.
We're not under 18 U.S.C. though.
But they are.
Yes.
They are. And so under their corporate policy, this is their penalty. So while we're doing this to America and everybody that's listening, Kathleen is being terrorized and tortured, as are hundreds of millions of people. Aren't you outraged? Everybody's got to step up. So here Kathleen is telling us a horror story that I've experienced 100 times over. And it's absolutely god-awful. Now, what are we going to do? She can't fight that cartel herself. To go in there is suicide.
And I also have additional charges against me through the private court of the Colorado Attorney General's office, run by Phil Weiser. Is the human trafficking enterprise is $1 to $3 billion. It runs up to Governor Jared Polis. 3 days before my mother died at Parker Adventist Hospital, I went to the state capitol. I had Barbara on the phone with me. I went into offices of state senators and representatives trying to save my mother's life, and no one would help me. I was
We know how it works.
Correct.
I was
Correct.
the laughing stock.
We all
Yeah.
have horror stories. I don't mean
Same
to cut
here.
you short,
No.
but you're into the problem. The deeper you dive into that problem, the more hopeless it is, and the more apathetic you seem. We all
Oh,
need to
that's
all
right.
learn.
That's right.
I now owe back taxes for all the money that the conservator used to defraud my parents' estate. That's both the IRS and the Colorado Department of Revenue.
Well, see, the more you fight them, the more muscle they use against you, and the more
Right.
of their corporate agents they bring out to fight you. So here, this is part of the wake-up process. We don't engage with them. We don't embroil with them. We band together as united we the people, and we're trying to walk everybody through the process that needs to be done to cart them off to federal prison for life, and to get the forfeiture of their assets, and to set an example by the first one in, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to convey. We're not here, let me just finish this thought.
We have to stop playing defense.
Exactly.
We can't be big and bad and imposing all kinds of sentences when we're struggling to even live free and not be waiting for the next knock at the door.
Yeah, but my question is, who's going to show up at my arraignment hearing at 9 a.m. on June 12th to defend?
Well, you just stop doing those things. But you need to learn what to do instead.
Catherine, she's asking what. Okay, you see the situation she's in. This has happened. What does she do now? But so tell her what she needs to do. It's May 18th. She's been forced. She's been threatened. You need to be here in this private corporation at this time.
I need people to come and pack the courtroom for my arraignment hearing. I'm going to be arraigned. You're
still breathing life into their fake process.
I have to plead guilty or not guilty.
No, you don't have to do that. You do not have to do that.
This is
you
what
have to learn why you don't have to do that before you do anything else. You have to learn what your true power is, or you're going to remain a slave.
So, Catherine, I think this is a good chance. This is a good chance because Kathleen is one of, at any given time in my group, we've got maybe 20 to 50 people that are in jail, threatened with jail, same situation. So maybe if we could just take a couple of minutes and kind of try to put everybody in a little bit of a better position, particularly the ones that are threatened with jail, because then all bets are off. Then we're kind of like at a place where we have to do something. So if you could just maybe walk Kathleen through some of the things that you've been talking to Roger about as well, because Roger's in jail, and there's many, like I said, anywhere between 5, 20 or more people in my group that have the same issue. So if you don't mind, maybe just put a couple of suggestions out there.
I'm facing 3 years of prison in the Colorado Department of Corrections.
I get it. You're stuck in the fear. You're stuck in their threats.
Exactly. That's where they got you where they want you. She's scared. She's scared right now.
I get it. And the only way I know of out of the fear is to learn that those who are terrorizing you don't have any authority, and they will admit they don't have any authority to do any of what they're doing. And you have to get that admitted in writing through the 3-notice process that we're doing now in Roger's case. He hasn't even initiated it yet. Roger is where he is to a great degree because he's been fighting in their system. If we fight in their system, then we will be subject to their statutes and codes and bylaws and whatever they pull up out of their butt, to stay as, the rules. Who made them, the deciders? They're not the deciders, and their own case law admits that the people are the deciders. Aren't they supposed to be public servants? So what does that make us? Aren't we their masters? It's like, we have a housekeeper who's raping our children, burning the house down, and we're wondering, well, she's telling us though that she's got a little court that she might give us some compensation, and her buddies are run the court. How does that work? No, that's not what we do. She's our servant. We treat her accordingly, and with respect to a degree, but we confront our servants, or those posing as our servants anyway, with the facts. To set out the facts. This is what happened, then this happened, then this happened. The facts that you're pretty sure they are unable to rebut, and you invite them to rebut those facts in your notices. And you can see a lot of what we've done in the 3-notice process if you go to our common law court website that Luciana created for us, www.occr2021.com.
Can someone send that to me by email, the link?
I'll send it to you, Kathleen. Yeah, I'll send it to you. And also, Catherine, you don't have a problem if I share your notice that you sent to with regard to Roger. You don't have a problem if
let's wait till Roger has a chance to look at it and make any corrections.
Okay, I sent it to him, by the way. He has it now.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, I think I got the facts straight. So.
No, but I'm just talking about to use as a template for these kinds of same, crimes against the victims for the crimes of the perpetrators.
You want to, tell what the facts are in a way that they will likely be unable to refute. And our experience after doing, I would say dozens, at least dozens and dozens of these notices, is that they never refute anything. We instruct them because we are the ones that are the source of all law. And also this notice is a common law offer of contract. And the offeror, probably remember that from law school, don't you, Barbara? The offeror in a contract is in charge of what goes into that contract. The offeree either can accept it or reject it, and they choose to accept it. And we tell them how they can do that. They can accept it by their silence. They can accept it by committing various acts, which they're probably likely to commit. So, and that's perfectly consistent with their Uniform Commercial Code. Acceptance by conduct or by silence creates a contract. And it's also an admission against interest. And we send these notices, and there are things that you confront them with as to why they don't have any authority that will make them realize that there's no point in trying to rebut anything we say, because we're using the words of their own corporate superiors writing their so-called case law. What are they going to do? Say the U.S. Supreme Court, their U.S. Supreme Court was wrong? They're not going to do that.
And these are most of the time, these are attorneys, judges that are getting these notices. I mean, they've got huge law firms. I mean, how easy would it be for them to get their law firm together and write a short notice back, a response saying, look, you're crazy because according to this, this, and this, and this, what we did to you was lawful. So you're wrong.
No, we need to find, okay, scroll down. Luciana's pulling up a petition that she did after she had completed the 3-notice process and after she got, after she filed it. Okay, so if you scroll down to the first notice, which you attach to your petition as Exhibit A. Okay, there's Exhibit A. Okay, and then scroll down one more. Okay, there's your notice. Now here in this matter, you are going on the offense, and but you're also pointing out that these other people who entered a judgment, so one of their so-called orders, uh, stealing your granddaughter, that the court that did that, the so-called court, had no authority to do that. And so the people we're naming, is the woman that was acting as the head of Supreme Court of Ohio, a corporation. We give the Dun and Bradstreet numbers that it was operating under. Then we named the fake corporate judge that signed the various documents that purported to kidnap Luciana's granddaughter. Then there's, other people who participated in it. I don't care if these people are typists or whatever they are, they participated in these crimes. That's aiding and abetting.
Either they participated in the beginning, they were part of causing the action of what happened, or they participated by refusing to do their job and stop the crime from continuing when they took an oath of office and had a duty to stop such a crime from continuing against a child. And they did nothing. So
Catherine, do me a favor.
Themselves.
Catherine, can you go back up to the beginning? This is so powerful. This document is so powerful. Just go back and read the heading where you're giving them the notice. Just read the words.
Right. Yeah, go back up to the title of the notice.
Just give them the title, because this title is
Notice of Claim. Notice of claim. Free people make claims. They don't whine and complain as you do in the corporate system when you're a slave. And they see you as a slave. They see you as one of their assets. They see you as livestock. The notion that you would have rights is ludicrous to them, okay? But here you're stepping outside of their system, which is why you don't jump back into their system by filing this notice. It's a notice of claim. You're standing up on your own authority as a living woman, not one of their corporate slaves, not one of their citizens, not one of their so-called persons, and you're giving them notice that they never had subject matter jurisdiction, which is another way of saying they never had authority and to do what they did. Notice of liability. That's referring to the people involved in these crime syndicates, their liability for the crimes that they committed while acting as if they were a court that they weren't, that it never existed. And then the notice of commission of common law kidnap, assault. An assault is merely, threatening someone with harm, and battery, actually inflicting the harm. Notice of the absence of consent or authority. Now, and here there's a lot of people like to put this in. I mean, really, they will deem you have consented by a lot of things that you do all the time. When you walk into their courtroom, wherever you are in that courtroom, so-called courtroom, they will deem that you have consented to their authority. The fake, black-robed wonder that walks in, if you stand up for him, you've consented. When you file anything in their system, you have consented. When you register to vote, you've consented. When you sign a marriage license, you've consented that they can administer your biological property of that marriage. When you ever answer the question, are you a U.S. citizen? They mean a United States corporation slave. And you say yes, they can presume all kinds of things about you then. You've got to undo those things so that you can legitimately step into these notices as a free man or woman. And then, you have you give them a fee schedule, because just giving them a notice by itself without consequences or asking questions and expecting they're going to answer anything, they never answer anything. You don't want them to, really. you put a fee schedule in which provides consequences. You give them an opportunity to respond because these are other people who, in their private lives, they're sovereigns too. But when they're acting as persons, they're not. But you bringing it. We're giving this notice to them as people. We're pulling them out of their role. Do you understand the difference? There's a role that they assume when they put on their black dresses or they do whatever they do. They are taking on a role, the role of a corporate person. You pull them out of that. This notice pulls them out of their role. And you got the sworn declaration, and what was the other thing at the end? Sometimes we'll put exhibits in. We put exhibits in less often now because Luciana had exhibits of documenting the abuse of her granddaughter, so she put those in. But a lot of times you don't really need those because you can use those later if they were to deny you caused physical injury to my daughter, my son, my grandmother, whoever. Whenever you just say it under oath, an affidavit stands as truth in commerce, in their uniform commercial code. And if they don't rebut it with facts of their own, then they're done. Then they've admitted it. And that's explained to them in the notice. And that there are consequences if they just ignore it. And just in case they didn't get it the first time, you send a second notice and a third notice, which is the way that Jesus told us to resolve disputes with our fellow man. You give them all these opportunities, and if they still don't rebut everything, then they have done two things. They have agreed that they are liable, just as you said they are. They've agreed to the facts as you set them out to be. They can never again deny those facts, and that's in any tribunal of theirs as well, because common law jurisdiction is superior to anything that some corporation, cobbles together. And you have created a contract with them resolving all matters in controversy. They have accepted your offer of contract. It says right there in the notice, this is a contract offer too. And if you do these things, you're silent, you don't rebut the facts, line by line, point by point, then you are in contract with them. Now now you're probably going to say, well, they're going to just jump in with an attorney who's going to do this and going to do that. No. We got that covered too. It's in the notice. You didn't send the notice to the attorney. The attorney doesn't have any knowledge of any facts. Anything he thinks he knows is hearsay. So, but if that were to happen, we have provisions in the notice that they will that anybody who jumps in who's not a named respondent will have to pay a $50,000 joinder fee. That tends to keep people out who don't have any facts to add. And the people who do know the facts and they do know that what you're saying in your notice is true, they don't have anything to say about it because they know it's true. What are they going to do? Add to their crimes by signing a document under penalty of perjury? For whatever reason. I mean, they've committed lots of crimes already. You'd think, well, why not another one? But for some reason, they choose not to do that.
So I have a question, Catherine. Mm-hmm. So what do? I have two attorneys representing me.
When you have an attorney, there is a presumption that you are a child or incompetent. Do you want that presumption to operate against you? Probably not. And that's why when we do this, we don't recognize attorneys in common law, and we don't recognize corporations or any other legal fiction. We don't recognize the all capital name that they brought you into this nightmare with in the first place. Look at the envelope or whatever they handed you. The very first documents, they'll have a perversion of your name in all capitals. That's not you. That's what they have to create so that their corporation can deal with this artificial entity that their buddies created with the Social Security Administration when you were born. There's, my name on my birth certificate, their birth certificate they created for me, is Catherine Hine, born July 15th. They created the entity, the all capital entity, all capital Catherine Hine, July 18th, when they recorded my existence in their documents. That's not me. And when they serve me with documents, when they serve the all capital name, I send those back to them. Now, if I've already accepted them because I didn't know any better, then I can still point out that even though they begin to spell after they've got you, after they've hooked you with the all capital name, they've gotten you to agree, yeah, I'm a legal fiction, all capital name. Once they've gotten you to do that, then it's more of an uphill struggle. Not struggle, but still you have to include something in your notice to rebut the presumption that, hey, you already agreed to act as if you were the all capital name. So you're standing in for the all capital name. You're a guarantor. You're a surety for the all capital name. And you will pay with your body if need be for the whatever they say that the all capital name did that harmed them. So you have to stop playing the game that they don't really believe any of this nonsense, but that's the theory that they're using. And a lot of people trying to decipher that theory, and I'm just giving you kind of the rundown of it. But you're not the person that they're claiming you are, and you got to stop acting as if you were when you file motions or file anything at all, even an objection to their lack of subject matter jurisdiction. You are playing in their sandbox. You are saying in any motion, you're the decider. I'm just begging. I'm just pleading. Free people plead only to their God. They don't plead to these scumbags. And
Catherine, talk for just a minute about the delivery of the document so that people are a little clear as to the distinction between delivery, sending, and filing. And so how are these documents to be delivered and to whom?
They're delivered to the people, and they can be delivered to agents for the people or principals for the people. Oftentimes, if the people that you're naming are judges, then the delivery of the notice and the claimant, the man or woman who has been harmed by these corporate goons, the claimant should not be doing anything except signing the notice. The claimant should not be revealing his or her address, should not be delivering anything. But the claimant needs two other people to help him or her. One, to deliver the documents, and delivery can be through U.S. Post Office, U.S. Postal Service, UPS. We tend to use U.S. Post Office less and less, except with certificates of mailing, because then we have the benefit of, well, there's a lot of reasons. Their mailbox rule says that when we deposit an item in the mail, it's presumed received. But we have served them. We have one man or woman that helps us with service, and that man or woman who helps us serves the documents on the people by various means. mail, email, fax, whatever. And then you have to depend on that man or woman later to sign an affidavit that they, or declaration, a sworn declaration, that I served it. I on such and such a date, and you document it. It bearing, certificate of mailing number, this or this, on such and such a date. I served the secretary or the receptionist for this man or woman, because you don't have to serve them in person. So then you need one other man or woman to help you, and that man or woman provides a physical address where they get mail, and we direct that any response. Remember, in the notice, we tell these people, you're going to respond. If you want to respond, you don't have to respond. But if you want to rebut anything we said, you better respond. And this is how you do it. You don't send it back to me, the claimant. I'm out of it now. I've got my agents to do that for me. So I've got one that serves you the documents as a perpetrator, perpetrator respondent. And then I've got another that receives any responses. And usually, like, I would say 99% of the time, it's more like 100% of the time, the receiver signs another affidavit, the affidavit of non-response, saying, I regularly get mail here, it's such and such a day, I've never received any response from any of the following men or women. That's it. And then you've got proof that you served the notice, proof that they didn't respond, and you do that times 3. You do a second notice and you do a third notice. Oftentimes, I've found, particularly in more minor cases involving less money for them, they will cave after the second notice. But we've also seen them cave after the second notice when they had somebody locked up too, and she was released. So you remember that, Luciana? Anyway, yeah, it was another gal that we were helping. Yeah, it was. Yeah, she was locked up, and we had we gave them 7 days notice. The first notice, they didn't respond. So 8th day, we serve a second notice. And later that day, the 8th day or the 9th, I can't remember which, they released her. We continued anyway with the third notice. And because they're pretty persistent, so are we. But we're naming the tune, not them. That's what you have to get in your head, that they're going to play it your way. You're not going to play it their way. And you have to be clear on why. And it goes beyond, does it work? Does it work? Yeah, I've got about 10 or 12 instances where, yeah, it has worked. It has worked. It's not an ironclad guarantee. These are psychopaths. They could do anything at any time. But most of them just want to get paid, and they don't want to get in trouble. And maybe some of them have the idea that their corporate superiors might not always be telling them the truth when they say, "Oh, sure, go ahead and beat that woman up. It's okay. We got your back." And that maybe that's not entirely accurate. So this, we just have to persist. And the more we persist, the more they back off.
Well, I have a question, Catherine.
Uh-huh.
So I already have I'm a double whammy. They built a case against me based on another case with my ex-husband that's currently under appeal, and the case is not going to get overturned. I'm going to have to file a 35C.
No, you're not going to have to do anything.
And so I have another attorney representing me for the appeal, and I'm on probation, And the probation officer has filed a notice with the judge to rescind my probation and lock me up. And this has been going on for, I don't know, since October.
It's just a kidnapping operation. And they're getting every time you file something into one of their fake tribunals, you are enriching them. You are, it goes through the CRIS system, Court Registry Investment System. Every month they gather up their data and they convey it to the clerk of the so-called federal district court in their area, and they make they send funds to them that, court fees and so forth, that end up in the Federal Reserve Bank and then out of the country. So,
Catherine, talk for just a minute.
You have to deal with each one of the matters that you have probably separate. You don't have to necessarily deal with them separately, because sometimes it's all part of the same operation.
Well, it is. It is.
Okay. If it's part of the same operation, then you certainly can and probably should take them all on in one notice. Just because they use one little fake tribunal here and another one there, and then there's a fake appeal and this and that. It's all the same operation, and they're all aiders and abettors. They're co-conspirators, and they all know what the big picture is. And if they don't, they certainly do after you serve them the notice, and they're not going to dispute it. So then you've got all 2 or 3, whatever it was, of their so-called cases. We don't even call them cases in common law. This is just a trafficking operation. They're getting paid so many different ways. We can't even prove it all. But when we tell them that this is a profitable venture for them, they don't dispute it ever, because it's true. So you could take it all on. You could take it all on, and just name them all. And I don't know if you want to get into the content of these notices and the specific reasons that they don't have any authority according to their own terms, their own definitions.
Well, the problem is I can't file anything. I can't do these notices because I'm represented by counsel. Well,
as long as you're stuck in that mindset, you can't do anything. You can't do anything. If you have an attorney, you can't do anything.
And I want to remind you, Kathleen, that both Catherine and Barbara here were also counsel. They were in there for many years, and they have seen other attorneys like Richard Fine, Elizabeth. I can't say her name right.
Elizabeth Baumgartner.
Yeah, these, for instance, are 2 attorneys who were arrested for standing up and saying, "Wait a minute, you can't do that, Judge so and so. You can't do that." And by standing up for their client or standing up for what's right, they themselves, as an attorney and bar member, were disbarred, were thrown into prison.
Correction. They weren't disbarred. Their license was their certificate was stolen and stripped. Now, they love that word disbarred because it's a slur. They like to do that. So then they can identify you, because I've been there many times, as a disbarred attorney, which is the correction is you, corporate cabal, seized, stripped, and deprived me of my bar certificate. So again, we got to flip the switch and just remember that we've got to identify their crimes properly.
What does the certificate say? I mean, what is it certifying, Barbara?
It's been a long time since I've looked at the bar certificate issued by the, bar cartel.
I don't think I ever got one. I got a bar card. And
I
it just
think I
says,
might have
member in
gotten a
good standing
certificate.
of the Supreme
Yeah.
Court of Ohio.
Yeah, I might have gotten a certificate. I actually got a letter of appreciation after I resigned from the Florida bar for my many years of service without ever having a client complaint. And then they stripped me of my bar license after thanking me for being their servant for many years. But let me go back for just a minute, because there's a couple things I love the fact that we're having this conversation with Kathleen, because it's kind of breaking it all down. And even though generally I never want to get into these horror stories, because that is the antithesis of what we're doing, but we're doing it in a productive way where we're showing what needs to be done if you're going to take control and take your unalienable rights back. And so I want to ask you, Catherine, to just describe a little bit further, because I also love the fact that there's 3 people involved, not just Kathleen or whoever the other victim might be. Three people that are identified in this notice. There's the person that serves the notice, and there's the person that receives any of their, purported responses. And so my question is, do you identify who these people are? Because I like the fact that the cartel can see that you're answering to several people. I mean, I'd love to have a long list of people, but just explain how that shows up in the notice if these people are identified.
Okay. In the notice, well, as you can see, if you want to scroll down further in yours, Luciana,
Okay.
since it's on the website,
Mm-hmm.
You want to pull that up?
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So there's where's our, that's at the end of the document. No, it's at the top of the document.
Okay. What part?
It's the top where it says notice, the beginning of Exhibit A. Yeah. Okay. There. Not the petition. Not scroll down. Where it gets into Exhibit A.
Okay. All right. It's after page 9. Okay.
All right. Now there's the note. Okay. Now, so you date it. You have the notice, and then you have who it's from. Don't put your address in there. Okay, let's just stay on this. Please scroll it up a second. Okay, we named the first one we named was Maureen O'Connor, and she's an agent of this legal fiction entity known as Supreme Court of Ohio, and among others. And then we make it clear we're serving her as the living woman. We don't recognize her titles or anything. There's no honorable this or any of that, or judge that. She's an employee, or she's a contractor,
Yes,
or an agent for sure of the cabal of corporations, subsidiary entities, and branches thereof, because that's what Dun & Bradstreet calls them.
yes.
Known as the Supreme Court of Ohio. And they may be known, if you go on the Dun & Bradstreet site, you may find that they have one name on the Dun & Bradstreet site, and they have another name that they do business with the public under, or maybe several names.
Yeah. Yeah, we're finding a lot of them, like for instance, the Supreme Court of Ohio, on other businesses they're contracting with, they're known as Supreme Court of Ohio, a lot of courts and police stations are doing that. I'm sorry, and they'll put the after.
Right.
Good.
That's how
Well,
Bradstreet does them.
That's the same thing when we looked up the U.S. Supreme Court. They became, I believe, Supreme Court U.S.
Yeah,
and then they might have. There were several registrations for the Supreme Court. One of them might have had the word "the" as well
at the end.
And
But my question, Catherine, I don't know if you're getting into the identification of the perpetrators, but my question was, and we can get to that afterwards, but I just want to make sure that we do get to it, is do we identify in this document the people, the living, breathing human beings that are going to deliver, that are going to act on behalf of Kathleen and deliver the document and be the person? We don't identify those people.
No, none of their business. Now, they will see their names later, because if it gets to a point where, well, actually what we generally do, when we're ready to do the second notice, we will attach to the second notice a copy of the first notice, or in our case, we're able to post the first notice on our website, so we don't have to go to the trouble of making all those copies. Then they're going to know who served the notice, because there will be an affidavit of service of that first notice that gets attached to the second notice. The second notice has attached to it the affidavit of service of the first notice and an affidavit of non-response to the first notice. 2 different affidavits, 2 different people.
No, well, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I like that, because then these perpetrators see that we're putting together a We the People army. And I would
That's
also,
right.
yeah, and I also
it has
love
more credibility too.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly. Then they know
the claimant
that
doing it. We don't have the claimant getting their hands dirty with that.
right.
No.
Right. And then the other question is, I guess, at what point do we have a website for each individual case, or is it because I love the fact that they see that there's a website and oops, you're viral. All of your crimes are now out there for the world to see. And so at what point do they get notice that your crimes are now on out there in the public? Is that
they're probably going to get that. Well, one way, and we've been starting to make better use of our website recently, and really, owe a great debt of gratitude to Luciana for maintaining it, not just creating it, but administering it also. And we have a pending notice section. So even if, let's say, you send a first and a second notice and the matter gets resolved, but while it's not being resolved, if we're in Ohio, we can just add that to the OCCR2021.com pending notice section. You just send it to us by email if you're going to be a claimant in our court. If you're going to be a claimant in our court, we have certain requirements. And or if you're going to be same requirements as if you're going to be a member of our court, and that is that you at least have disengaged in 3 important ways from the cabal. We don't want cabal members to be on our court, okay? People who don't understand, what they're part of, we don't want them on our court. People who still think that they're slaves, we don't want them on our court, and that's got a historical precedence. In Magna Carta days, they had only landowners, only men. They thought that would be a proxy for, getting responsible people on there. So that's what we do. And so we have people on our court who have corrected their status as to voter registration. They've rescinded that. Corporate United States citizenship, they have repudiated that directly to the men or women who run those corporate operations. We send those to whoever the man or woman is that heads your county voter registration place, wherever you're registered now or have ever been registered, because they keep these records forever. And they will drag them out to say, well, you agreed to be, part of our our livestock back then. So well, you have to. Your signature is a powerful thing, and if it's out there, they've got it, and you want to make sure that you rebut it. So, and then the third one is to rebut the presumptions created by your parents' signature, probably your mother's signature as informant on the birth documents. So that's where they use that as a springboard for all the other frauds that they commit. The first fraud happens when you're born, and they create a document out of that, and the birth documents, and the all capital name, the legal fiction, and they start monetizing that, and it becomes, there's investments in it, and it becomes a security that's traded on Wall Street, all without your knowledge. Of course, you're an infant at that point, or the knowledge or consent of your parents. They just thought, well, they were browbeaten into signing the document to begin with. They were told, well, you have to do this. You have to do this. And most people will succumb to that. I would question anytime someone tells you, you have to do this, you have to do that. 9 times out of 10, you don't have to do anything.
Nowadays, if somebody refuses to sign a birth certificate or any such thing after they give birth in hospital, they already have CPS people and stuff in the hospital. They'll tell you, you can go home, but you're gonna have to leave the child. They see a problem there, and they're right off the bat, you're threatened that they may kidnap your child.
This gets more yes, I'm sure. But then there are many times that they'll come in and grab your child anyway. So, just because. And so, I've had 4 kids, 2 in the hospital, and this was a few years ago before they were trafficking infants as like they do now. The last 2 at home, because I didn't want to be part of that. And common law it's open to everyone, but it's not for everyone. Not everyone is going to feel comfortable disengaging completely from the system, or even I don't know. These are the ways most people are able to disengage, though, is through the rebuttal of the birth documents. We know it's a fraud, and that's all we're saying. We're not asking to administer the birth documents like some of these twisted common law fake people are doing. We don't want any part of their racket that they're creating out of our all capital name. We didn't create the all capital name. There's a maxim in common law: you cannot administer that which you did not create. And by the same token, they can't administer our physical selves because they're not God and they didn't create us. That's why they have to administer the all capital name. If they can just get us to agree we are the all capital name, they're in business. And most of us don't not know what we're agreeing to. Go along with it. And of course, we're threatened, that we better do it. And it's the same thing. Don't worry about it. I mean, that's what Luciana was told at one point. Oh, it's the same thing. And
I got thrown in jail for saying, no, it's not. And I just want the record corrected. Oh, it was a big deal. I got thrown in jail for correcting the spelling of my name and saying it wasn't.
You can't do anything right in their system. Once you step onto their turf, you play by their rules, the rules of that turf, or you don't play, or you can't expect them. You go to somebody's house and you're not going to walk in and tell them how they're going to raise their kid. You're on their turf. Now, what we do with the common law notices is we drag them onto our turf, the turf of living people. So, and then we also point out to them that they will never again, they will have to physically drag our bodies into their fake tribunals to get us there. Even when they send you a letter, if you don't show up, we're going to arrest you. That's just an extortion threat rather than just not show up, which will more than likely lead to bad things. That's the point where you need to swing into action and name the people that are sending this extortion threat, which is what it is, using the public mails, committing federal offenses in the process.
Mail fraud.
Mail fraud. Yep. Then they know this isn't, you're not going to be low-hanging fruit for them. You let them know. The sooner you can let them know that, better. And, it's like with any abuser, you keep putting up with it and putting up with it and putting up with it, and it's going to be hard to change your strategy because they're waiting for you to switch back to how it was. And they expect that, and they're going to ramp up the pressure until you switch back. So you have to have the mental stamina to stay the course. And that mental stamina has to come from understanding why and how this process works. And the fact that you don't have any other alternatives that are realistic anyhow.
Well, talk for 1 minute, Catherine, about the end of the process, because that's where we don't have our own law enforcement. So we get the judgments, and then you and I had talked about it a little bit on the phone as to what happens. But so we've got through the 3-step, we've got through the initial notice, we've got through the rest of the notice process, we've gotten no response. We've gotten on their language, I guess, a summary judgment, and then we've got our judgment. And so take us from there. Once we get the judgment, talk about the process.
Well, you would have to have already formed a common law court to get a judgment. All you have at the end of the 3 notices is an agreed to a contract resolving all matters in controversy. You can take that contract to a common law court. In theory, you could take it to one of their fake tribunals too, and say, look, we've resolved all matters in controversy, and we ask that you adopt this as the lawful order of your court. And that's what we do in OCCR. After the people, so when we receive cases in OCCR, they're already resolved through the 3 notice process. We just rubber stamp them basically, because the people who are named as respondents are just,
they've defaulted.
They defaulted, so there's nothing to try.
Yes, right. But then the process is, let's just say we're in Ohio because you're up and running there. So the process is they've defaulted, then you issue your judgment, and then talk to us about the process from there, because that's where we have the issues of execution of the judgment.
Well, I don't know very many people who've gotten to that point. So we're the only ones I know of who get to that point where we're issuing, the only ones I know of who are issuing common law judgments. And common law judgments can be enforced in the same way that their so-called fake judgments without jurisdiction can be enforced, through notice to the people running the recording of deeds and so forth. You can put liens on their property, and you can send notices to their employer to garnish wages, and you can do all those things. As a matter of fact, and I wanted to mention this too, not everything we do, sometimes we will act on behalf of the all capital legal fiction in order to, if it's absolutely, we can't get a bank account without it, we can't get an airplane ticket if we think we need to have one. And there's one of their cases from the United States Supreme Court, and I cited that. We cite that usually in every notice, that we can pick and choose when to be in contract with the cabal by agreeing to use the all capital name they created for us, or we can decline. It's our choice.
Our choice.
But of course, they sabotage a free choice, because I would normally prefer, for example, not to get a driver's license, a little permission slip from the corporate demons who think that they're our masters when they're our servants. I don't need their case law admits I don't need permission from them to travel. The right to travel, they admit, is fundamental, and it's a common right, and they can't regulate it, tax it, or do any of the things they're trying. License it. A license is just authority to do something which would otherwise be illegal. It's not illegal to travel from point A to point B. You're not harming, and we're free in common law to do whatever we like, unless we harm someone else. And anyway, so we can choose. It's not really a free choice about the driver's license, because they've got all these, armed psychopaths that have no duty to protect, but they're out there, beating the bushes for revenue generation purposes.
Right.
And so it's not safe. So if you have a driver's license, you can, in your affidavit that you attach to your notice, I always have people put the reason that they still have a driver's license, not because they want to be in contract with the cabal, but because they don't want to be battered on the side of the road by some ignorant corporate code enforcer. But the Marion versus Apache Indian tribe case is the case from the U.S. Supreme Court that says we, as free people, can pick and choose when to be in contract and when not to be.
I have a question, Catherine. This is Catherine in Colorado. So I don't have anyone who can deliver documents. I have no support system for that. Can I use the attorneys I have to do that for me, or
can she send them registered mail, or?
There have been times that we have, just had the claimant do it, but and or you can hire somebody to do it. It would be worth it to do that.
Or
Somebody
maybe even your pastor or someone at your church might even be willing.
No, people aren't. Nobody wants to deal with Douglas County, Colorado. No one will.
Everyone thinks their own neck of the woods is the be all end all, and when it comes to psychopathy, but there's usually some place somewhere that can beat them out when it comes to evil.
No,
and here's another thing to take into account, and I've seen this in the physical abuse situations interpersonally, and that is we tend to ascribe much greater power to our batterers than they actually have, and that weakens us more. And I mean, I'm not saying underestimate the enemy, but don't magnify the threat, that the dangerousness that he or she may actually not really possess. You have to defang them to a certain degree to function, and defanging them is pretty accurate. I mean, it's based on fact. It's not just wishful thinking. They really don't have this kind of power that they proclaim, and that we unquestionably bow down to. So, yeah, I don't know. There's got to be somebody in Colorado that is doing common law also that because I hate to see people embark on anything all by themselves. Now, I've seen people who, one thing that can be more difficult to get is someone to provide an address to receive the notices.
Well, I'm part of the address confidentiality program.
What was it called again? The what?
Address confidentiality program. It's called ACP. And it's a mail forwarding program through the state of Colorado for domestic survivors, for victims of survivors and victims of domestic violence. And your physical address is kept confidential. And ACP has really basically saved my life because Jill Roman, the coroner in Douglas County, Colorado, we got into an epic battle over my mother's body because after my mother was murdered at Parker Adventist Hospital last April, he tried to get rid of her body. And with the help of Barbara, I was able to, with her suggestions, I was able to get jurisdiction over my mother's body. And Jill Roman, the coroner, then sent deputies out to have me arrested. And they went to my ACP address, which is the physical address for the facility that sorts the mail for ACP participants.
There are other services like that too. Yeah.
Are there?
Yeah, we've got one in Philadelphia, Ohio. Yeah, Parcel and Post. They give you a physical address. You get your mail. They got a little like a post box there. You can get your mail there. It's a physical address, though.
But I have
but also we talked about this, and I think we had concluded that we could get a virtual physical address, and many states, there are services that offer that. So it's not a post office box, it's a physical address, not your address, but a physical address where notices can be received. And
I wouldn't use a PO box. Then you're contracting with.
No, not a PO box. It's just a service that gives you a physical address.
Right.
But I have my mail actually forwarded to a physical address, but it's not the address where I physically reside. And then I go pick up my mail. And so that's how it's worked.
But you need someone else to be able to say that they pick up mail there and they every day and they didn't get anything. It's got to be something that they have control over.
Oh, they do. They have control over it because it's a nonprofit, and I'm a participant with that nonprofit, and they pick up my mail.
But you have access to it too, not just them, right?
I do, but they hand me my mail because my mail comes in brown.
It comes to them first.
It comes to them first, and it's addressed to me, and then they keep my mail, and then they give me my mail.
Would they sign an affidavit that they didn't receive mail over a certain period of time?
Probably not. I don't think that they'd want that legal liability.
As if I can't imagine how that would create anything. But people are cowards. They really are.
Well, they are. And
that's why I tell people that, common law is not for everybody.
Yeah, well, I slugged it out common law with getting my property rights just taken away from me. I was thrown in jail. I mean, it was just unbelievable.
You were probably following Anna von Reitz, weren't you?
I was following what?
Anna von Reitz in the Colorado 9.
I don't know I don't know who that is. So I wasn't doing any of that. I was just doing everything pro se in the civil courts, and I just got destroyed.
If you were in their courts, that's why it didn't work.
Yeah. So.
Well, we'll think about it, Kathleen. We'll see, because it's very critical. That's a big component of what we're doing, to be able to come up with some ideas in terms of getting those other two people, and see if we can come up with some suggestions, because that's central to the plan.
Yeah, well, thank you, Barbara. Yeah, in Colorado, it's a bunch of victims are a bunch of Facebook fanatics run by someone here in Colorado. And Barbara knows who I'm talking about. I'm not going to name them, but and actually she came to stalk me at my when she found out where I was working, she actually stalked me at my job. So, and Barbara knows who I'm talking about, but it's just it's just awful here in Colorado.
Yeah. Okay. We have a question from a gentleman named Charles Stewart, who wants to jump in the call, and he's said that he may offer some suggestions. So let's. Is that
all
possible?
right, Charles? Oh. What happened?
Maybe he has to come in on that other link to be a part of the show. Maybe
know.
he's in the participant link, or he's in the live link versus the guest link. Charles, I don't know if you can hear us, but maybe you have to access through the other link. So if you could send us a text and confirm that you're going to try to access through the other link.
Okay, yeah. Okay, he said he got it. So we're looking for him to come in here. It'll just take him a second, I'm sure. So I did put the link in the YouTube chat. I'm trying to manage both that are going live right at the same time.
Because for a while there, I didn't hear anything. I don't know what happened.
Okay, so we're just waiting for him to come onto this section.
Okay, I think he's just doing.
We'll see him when he pops in. Charles Stewart. I'll find out where he's at.
Says he's trying to connect through the link.
Okay.
There's a lot of things that we could be doing to try to get resolution to these administrative type things, and that's why we the people have to step up. There's just no excuse. There's just no excuse when we're dissecting a perfect case that Kathleen is here, experiencing all of the things that everyone experiences. So we're dissecting a perfect case.
Hi, Charles.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Catherine.
Where are you calling from? Where are you calling? Where are you here from?
I'm in Texas.
Okay.
Yeah. And I'm glad to see the great discussion. It does my heart good. There's not enough people recognizing common law and talking about the big problem in our community is lack of courage, right?
Yeah.
These are right on target for where we need to go if we're going to save the country. So I've talked with Catherine before, but I'm glad to meet you other ladies. And I do hope, maybe I can contribute something to your discussion here. I yield.
Okay. Yeah, I just want to say, too, that a lot of people, when they get excited about common law, they want to make they want to save the country, save the world, and I think we got to be realistic and not be grandiose.
Right.
Trying to save our own selves. We got to learn how to not be slaves first before we then do anything.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's
exactly right.
Yeah, I think we have to start with what's going on in our community, with our neighbors, with our friends and families, help what we can here and there. But I think a lot of people come in and they're like, look what's happened here, and it's happening there, and there. I'm going to step in, and we're going to make a movement. We're going to save it's going to be
house.
quite hard to save the world, but you can start by saving your neighbors, your friends and family. You know,
We have to build
stand
a
up.
platform. We have to build a
Yeah.
platform, and that's what we're trying to do here.
Well,
Yeah.
here's what the basic elements of it, I think, are a common law court, a common law grand jury, and a common law militia. And remember, the common law militia in the Constitution, when it referred to law, was talking about common law. It's Second Amendment protected. There's no two ways about it. It comes right out and says that.
Right.
So, you know, but I think really the militia is everybody. Everybody needs to be armed, and ideally in your neighborhood. You know, you don't want to have to call somebody, you know, 150 miles away to come help you because they formed a common law militia in some other part of your state.
Right.
You want to at least have people in your community that will that know how to defend a neighborhood, how to patrol a neighborhood. There's a book out here. I'm gonna just show it that talks. It's mostly about other things. It's called The Lost Ways, and I don't know if anybody can see that, but anyway, he talks about, you know, the SHTF scenario.
What was that again, Catherine?
The SHTF scenario, when the shit hits the fan.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And it will. It will.
And so mostly it's about, you know, what to, you know, about food growing and other things, and making rocket stoves and all kinds of other things. But there's also a chapter devoted to, you know, when the system of so-called justice, you know, breaks down completely, and it may, you know, I mean, we're seeing a little bit of that, you know, with this little COVID fiasco that they prefer doing everything electronically now rather than in the courtroom. I wonder why that is. But and certainly we can do that. You know, it's more convenient, especially as if we form a common law court or a grand jury in one of the state republics, then it's going to be. I know in Ohio we have people from Cleveland, Southern Ohio, Chillicothe, Southwestern Ohio. You know, they can't. Nobody's going to drive all the way to a central location in Ohio. It's not going to work. We have to meet virtually until you know, ideally this catches on to such a degree that every county just about is going to have their own common law grand jury, common law court. But I think the common law court really comes first, because if you had a common law grand jury and you investigated a bunch of people and you came up with a true bill, then what? Then what do? You got to be able to prosecute that somewhere. So you already have to have your common law court in place. And really, you should have your common law militia in place too, or your common law grand jury is not going to have much in the way of teeth, is it?
Can I jump in a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, you have some experience with the common law militia movement.
Well, thank you. And if I might, technicality, I think I may have, in our previous conversations, Catherine, we may have touched on this, but militia is a term that's usually connotated at the state level of people-powered enforcement and availability to keep the state in good order. At the county level, the term for this smaller community of armed men available to enforce the law is posse comitatus. Okay, so it's the same concept. It just fits together in larger or smaller communities. Does that make sense, Captain?
We're the people. We can call it whatever we want. We can call it a committee of safety. We can call it a neighborhood watch. We can call it a security force. We can do whatever we want. We're the source of all law. If you want to call it a posse comitatus, so be it. But usually that goes with the sheriff, and people get confused between the so-called sheriff that takes the corporate paycheck and the original common law sheriff.
And please know that the sheriffs, the FBI, all of the courts militia with guns and all that come after us when the courts do something wrong and we try to call them out on it. Now all of them will call, the group of people with morals trying to stand up for what's right, and show you this is what's right, this is what's moral. Look what you've done. We're going to stand up for this person and back them up. You cannot do this. And we're standing up. Now they will call this so-called militia. They'll call us sovereign citizens, and the FBI and all of them have coined this. I'm just saying they will call us that, and they have trained their people and their army on this term, which we clearly are not. It's an oxymoron. We are clearly not sovereign citizens. We associate ourselves as or with sovereign citizens, but they will use that term to cause their people to come after us and after those who assist us. And this is where we need to stay faithful and walk with God in this. It's the only way.
That's what happened to me when my mother was alive, because I went to the FBI and I had two advocates working with me, exposing the guardianship racket in Douglas County, and we went to the FBI.
FBI is part of the problem.
They basically went back.
They procure child victims for sexual purposes for politicians. Yeah, they are prohibited by the Constitution from even existing. They're part of the problem. You don't go to them for
That's right. That's right. But I think what we need, what the takeaway here has to be.
We need a document. We need a court order. That's what having a court gives you. It gives you a court order that gives you the authority to do what you're doing. And they're going to think twice, particularly when their names are on the order.
That makes sense.
Or their bosses' names are on the order.
And so are we calling it an order? What is your...
Yeah, or judgment.
Judgment.
Yeah.
Okay.
We call it judgment.
So I think that we should think about the militia, and the enforcement, because that's the big piece. And we're not going to get to that resolution now, but I think that, we've got some open points that we should think about. And also, how do we get support for Kathleen in terms of the other two people that have to be a part of this process? And so the other thing that really disturbed me, and I'm not sure we should think about it, is Luciana said that newborns, and I've seen that in my group, are taken away in the hospital because of the failure or our refusal to sign over, our rights. And so let's think about that too, because again, we're talking about the most unbelievably important matters in the world. And what we're doing is so important. And so I think that those are kind of three things that we've come up with in our conversation that maybe we can think about and bring up the next time, or take them one by one, and we'll communicate with each other in the interim, Kathleen, you as well, and anybody else that's part of this call, and try to exchange some suggestions, because those are really big pieces of the puzzle.
Catherine and Luciana, I have one quick question before we close. And this has been so helpful, but is it worth it? There's a law in the state of Colorado, and a former
There's a statute, one of their corporate statutes, you mean?
a former district attorney who's now a criminal defense attorney told me about. It's Rule 16, which is basically the structure for criminal prosecution and in the process to indict and prosecute an alleged perpetrator of a crime. And he told me that there's a law, there's a process in the state of Colorado called a Franks hearing. And the Franks hearing is a hearing that you ask the judge for to go after allegations in an arrest warrant for criminal charges. And no one had ever told me about a Franks hearing. And I'm wanting to know from you, Catherine and Luciana, and he said that I should be asking my criminal defense attorneys about a Franks hearing and why they haven't talked to me about that. And I wanted to know from you and Catherine and Luciana, if you think that is, because I've already reached out to my attorney and I've asked her to put it in writing. The rule 16 for criminal charges.
We're not under the civil rules. I don't help people navigate the system because I don't think it's navigable. I don't help people who have attorneys. I just don't. You know, it's a dead end. It's a waste of time. And I'd be happy to help you exit the system. I won't help you dig yourself a deeper hole.
I could just let you know what we've seen and encountered year after year after year. Let's say you found a way to attack the Franks hearing, and these attorneys and judges saw a group of people getting close, and we were finally gonna prove in their system, maybe because people still go in there. Once you get close enough to their little sham legal process of calling this new Franks, whatever it is, thing, what they're going to do, they'll just create a new statute and a new code, and it's one after another. And once you get close to beating that one, they will create a new one, and they'll just continue doing that because they make it work for themselves. It's never going to work for you. It's going to work for themselves and their corporations and the members of their corporations. It's a mad system
that they're using, maybe challenging the allegations. I mean, yeah, you can do that with your notices.
Through the notice. So through the notices, I can challenge your allegations.
Yeah.
Okay.
As a living woman, not as.
But you want to do it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It's just part. Basically, we don't deal with the merits of what they claim that they're doing to us, because to do that impliedly says you're the decider. They're not. You can't play that and expect to prevail.
Yeah, you're coming to these people that have been proven and shown to do crimes against you and your family, and now you're going to go before them in their black dress on their stage and bow down to them and say, you have authority over me after all the crimes you committed. Now I'm going to beg you for this. I mean,
it's like going to Adolf. Right. Go to Adolf Hitler. Right.
Yeah. You need to make a choice at one point and make a decision. Who is your God? Who do you serve? Who is your God? Who is your master? Is it that man in the black dress on a stage who says he's your master? Mm-hmm. Or is it God who created you and gave you freedom and gave you rights? You need to
Kathleen,
make a choice.
I'm going to send you the link, And then you look at the documents, and then you're going to feel a little bit more comfortable as to being able to make the decision. So I think that's the first step, that, you need to look at the documents, go through the process yourself, and then you'll be better educated and better able to decide which way you want to go with this, because you've got to make the decision. By the time a person gets to the end game where you are and where so many of us have been, now your life and liberty is at stake. And so I think that, we should all think about the three things that we've talked about in terms of open points. And I just want to thank you, Catherine and Luciana, for being so eloquent and simple and spelling it out, very easily for people, that this is the option. This is what we have, and it's a very powerful tool. And Catherine, your documents are so powerful.
Thank you. We've had
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you.
Good results. So, yeah. Thanks, everyone, for the broadcast, and we'll be back again next Thursday at the same time, 8 Eastern, I should say. And
Right.
And Luciana's going to post this a link to the YouTube page where you can post comments. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. God bless you all. We'll be back.
Okay. Good night.